Hi, welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Tina Howard. Today I have with me Bill Powell. And we are really thrilled to have you today, Bill.
Thank you.
As I told Bill on the phone, I have had no less than 3 people ask me to please invite you on the show. That's really something. I think people are mostly familiar with you because of your photography. And if you take the Hartwell Sun, or if you have seen his pictures on Facebook, then you will have a real treat seeing all kinds of pictures of everything from landscapes to people. And so this is who we think Bill Powell is Mr. Photographer. Well, today we're going to find out a little bit more about who Bill Powell is and how he came to Hartwell and all that great stuff. So
look forward to it.
So take us back to your beginnings. I want to start early on.
Early on?
Yeah.
Well, I'm from the beautiful mountains of southern West Virginia.
Oh.
Born and raised in Bluefield, West Virginia, which is a small town, Twin City, Bluefield, West Virginia, and Bluefield, Virginia. But I was born and raised on the West Virginia side. Grew up there, went to high school there during what I call happy days. In the 50s, life was good. That is, if you were white and middle class. If you were poor or a minority, I'm sure it was difficult.
Yeah.
But
well,
it was
no
good.
Doubt simple for somebody who lived where you did.
Yeah, it was just a great time. And at the end of my senior year, my father decided that it was time for the family to relocate, and so he had an opportunity, and we moved from Bluefield, West Virginia to West Palm Beach, Florida.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, now, were you still a senior or had you graduated?
I just graduated.
Okay.
And so it was time to go to college, and I'd been thinking about what is now called Virginia Tech, which in those days we called VPI.
Okay.
Which was not far in Blacksburg, Virginia. But I thought, well, if the family's moving to Florida, let's explore Florida. So I visited University of Florida and Florida State University and decided I'd really like to go to the University of Florida. So at the end of August 1959, I matriculated at the University of Florida.
How about that?
Yes.
Now, you had grown up running probably barefoot through the mountains of West Virginia.
Well, not
Beautiful.
really.
No? Okay, tell me about that.
No, I mean, it's just a beautiful mountainous part of the state.
Yeah.
And just the sort of things that teenage boys did. All the boys had a .22 rifle, which was a squirrel gun, and our mothers would pack us lunches, and we'd go up in the mountains and shoot squirrels and just have fun.
You were outdoors all day.
Yeah, I didn't hit many squirrels because I wasn't a very good shot, truth to tell. But it was just a great place to grow up, very wholesome environment.
Yeah.
It was just a good life.
Very uncomplicated. And then you take that mountainous, and West Virginia is beautiful, and so is Florida. So you trade that for the flatlands, right, of Florida and the beach, and you said your dad relocated. Did he take another job?
Right.
Okay.
Dad was in the automobile business. We didn't have an agency of our own. Okay. He managed dealerships for people who owned them. Okay. And he had an opportunity to go work in Palm Beach, in West Palm Beach.
Wow.
And so...
What did your mother say?
Mother thought it would be okay.
Yeah.
Dad was a little reluctant.
Oh.
But we moved, and they settled in, and I left and went to the University of Florida. So I was a baby gator.
You weren't really a baby gator. Mm-hmm. You weren't really there in West Palm very long.
Except on the school breaks.
When you would be home. Did you have siblings?
Yes, a little sister 8 years younger.
Okay. So she actually did some of her growing up, I guess went to high school.
Yes.
In West Palm.
Well, actually, we were only there a year.
Oh, okay.
And that's an interesting life part. I went to the University of Florida and decided I would major in fraternity. 2 weeks after I matriculated, I joined a fraternity and enjoyed myself very much. Devoted some time to my studies, but not as much as one would do if one wanted to be a diligent scholar.
Oh, I understand.
And so at the end of my freshman year, before the University of Florida came to me, my father decided that West Palm Beach was not for them.
Oh.
And so he had an opportunity to move the family from West Palm Beach to Roanoke, Virginia, which is only 90 miles from Bluefield, West Virginia,
Sure.
where we'd been. And he would be there with an automobile agency there. And so he said, son, since you didn't do very well at the University of Florida, I think we ought to talk about college. Ooh. And so fortunately in Roanoke, in the small town, kind of a sister town really, is Salem, Virginia, and there was a wonderful liberal arts college called Roanoke College. And so I went there and pleaded my case and said, okay, I've learned a lesson. I would like to go to college here. And so they let me in, and so I enrolled at Roanoke College, and that's where I met Sarah.
Oh, cool.
And
now, is Roanoke College a small college?
It's a small Lutheran college,
okay.
And at the time, around 950 students.
Okay.
Has a reputation as preparatory for graduate school.
Okay.
A real strong liberal arts curriculum.
Okay.
And so I went there, and I lived at home. I actually was at home and commuted the 10 or so miles to the college. Sarah lived in the dorm. Her family was there in Roanoke, but she wanted to live in the dorm.
Have the college experience.
Yes.
Now, did you meet her early on, like that first?
Well, it's funny. Toward the end of my sophomore year, really.
Okay. Do you remember the day?
Oh, absolutely.
I
remember the day she walked into the library, and I thought, that's the prettiest girl I ever saw in my life.
Aww.
And so she went up to a girl that I knew. And so when she left, I went up to my friend Ann Ray and said, Ann Ray, who was that beautiful brunette? And she said, that's Sarah Lotz. And I said, well, can you arrange for me to meet her? I said, sure. So a few days later, I met Sarah.
That's so nice. And see, when you're where you're supposed to be, in the library, not at the front. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
You were studying in the library, no doubt, and then you saw her walk in, and the rest is history.
The rest is history.
So the friend provided the introduction.
Yes.
And did you start dating right away, or?
Not right away, because it was toward the end of the sophomore year, and she went with a group of students to Europe, and then I sold encyclopedias door to door in North Carolina during the summer.
Oh, wow.
To pay for my education, because Daddy said, okay, son, let's get to work.
Yeah.
So it was actually then the beginning of my junior year that we started dating seriously.
So you met, and and then you had to be apart for a few months. Mm-hmm. So, and you knew maybe when school started again, that meant being maybe able to see Sarah again.
Right, and I had looked forward to that. Yeah.
That's good.
So that was something that I had looked forward to.
That's nice. How would she describe you when you first met?
I don't know. That'd be an interesting question for her. I don't know, but I was more serious about my studies than I was at the University of Florida, but I was still a pretty immature 20-year-old. 19 years old, what would I have been?
About 19.
19, 20
maybe.
Yeah. And she truly became the stabilizing and centralizing force in my life, and I'm man enough to admit it. Yeah, because she was.
I love that.
She had strong faith, and I had sort of a weak faith.
Okay.
And so she made it clear that she was not interested in going, that she would like to go out with me, but we would not go to fraternity parties. We would not do that sort of thing. And so we started going to church together at her home church in Roanoke, which was where her family was. And so she really, I would say, turned my life around.
Oh, that's so nice. And she was mature, I guess.
Far more mature than I was, yes.
As some
and that's been true our whole lives. We're the same. Actually, I married an older woman.
You did?
She's 6 weeks older.
Oh, my goodness. Scandalous.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the women are more mature at that age than the men, but so that's not that unusual. But you were attracted to her because, first of all, she was beautiful. And then secondly, maybe because she was so steadfast and obviously smart, because she was there.
Well, she had been there her freshman year as well. So I just sort of asked around about her, and everybody had really good things to say about her and her role in the college community. And
how would you describe Sarah when you first met her? Was she studious, quiet?
She was studious and quiet, yes.
And beautiful.
And very active in music. She's been active in music her whole life.
So she's musical.
And that continues, of course, all the way through today.
Sure, yeah.
She had voiceless. She has a beautiful soprano voice.
Yes,
And
we sing in
so-
the choir together. So,
she,
sadly, I don't sit next to her, but I know she has a
So
beautiful
she was
voice.
involved in all that.
That's great. Now, what did Sarah study music there?
No, she was an English major.
Okay, an English major. And how about you when you came from fraternity to...
Well, that's a funny story.
Actually studying.
My father had wanted to be a dentist, and during the Depression, he enrolled at the University of Louisville and attended one semester at the University of Louisville in the dental college there, and had to drop out because his father died, and he had to come back to West Virginia and support his mother.
Wow.
So he came back and was a biology teacher and supported his mother. So he said, and then got into the car business later. But he said, son, I can afford to send you to dental school, so I want you to be pre-med and go to dental school. Well, of course, in that time, sons looked at their father and said, yes, sir.
That's right.
So I was pre-med at Roanoke College, taking biology, chemistry, and all that. And my advisor said, well, what would you like to take for fun? And I said, well, I'd like to study a little bit about philosophy, Plato and Aristotle and some of those.
I was thinking you were going to say something else for fun, but...
And I just thought I'd like to learn about the ancient Greeks.
Okay.
I really don't know why.
Now, where does that come from?
Well, I don't know.
Mythology? Did you study that in high school? Maybe have some
No,
mythology classes?
I don't really know where it came out of, but it was really funny. And so I was taking those courses and acing them because I just loved them, and I was struggling with my science, struggling. And so at the end of my sophomore year, my advisor said, what are you doing? And I told him the story that I was going to be a dentist because my father wanted me to be. And he said, well, son, I don't think that's going to happen. And so I said, okay. He said, follow where you want to go academically. And I said, well, I'd like to learn more about the ancient Greeks. And I said, I don't know why. There's just something, even though I'm a Christian, there's something about philosophy that interests me. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, why don't you go home and talk to your dad? Oh, boy. So I did. And Dad,
philosophy is the foundation of our society, really.
Exactly. And that's what I quickly came to learn. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, my bias today academically is I think all undergraduate students should be required to major in philosophy and then on the graduate level do something else.
Then figure it out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I went home and talked to Dad, and he was very understanding, as it turned out.
He was?
Yeah. He said, I see your grades and I see what you're doing well in and what you're not, so follow your heart.
Well, good.
And so I did. And so it was just an enjoyable experience from that point forward in my undergraduate studies.
That's great. Finding something that clicked. But you had enough understanding, enough self-awareness, I guess, to know I'd like to study ancient Greeks and philosophy. Whereas a lot of 20-year-olds are still kind of,
and I don't know where that came from, really. Yeah. But it was there.
Interesting.
And of course, what that did was prepare me, as it turned out later, for going on into graduate school and so on.
Sure. Did you know at that point grad school was a part of your future? You had thought about med school. So.
Well, it's interesting. My philosophy professor was finishing up a PhD at the University of Virginia, and he was there at Roanoke College, working. Getting his feet on the ground, finishing up, and looking for a university position. And so he was very instrumental in influencing me and telling me, look, with an undergraduate degree in philosophy, there are not many opportunities. At that time, you'll need to go on and at least get your master's degree. Mm-hmm. And so then the question was, where? Well, as it turned out, he got an opportunity to go to the University of Georgia on the faculty. And he said, Bill, you might want to go there and see what they offer in terms of the master's degree, and perhaps you would like to go to the University of Georgia. Do you know anything about it? I said, no. And he said, well, just my suggestion. So I did. And Sarah and I, at this point in my senior year, were getting more and more serious. We became engaged and decided we would get married as soon as we graduated in June. And so we then thought, well, let's pray about this and see what seems to open up. And surely enough, we got in the car and in midsummer and drove to Athens from Roanoke, Virginia, and talked to the folks in the philosophy department And they said, boy, you had quite a freshman year, didn't you? And I said, yeah. They said, but you've turned the corner, so we will let you in conditionally. And I said, what does that mean? They said, well, we will admit you to the graduate program in philosophy at the University of Georgia, but you have to prove yourself that first quarter. And if you do fine, then green light and we'll go. So by then I was serious about my studies, so it was green light and go. So,
were you married when you moved down?
Yes.
Okay.
We got married in June and moved to Athens in August
Okay.
of 1963.
Wow. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarah had left her family in Roanoke and had moved to Athens on faith because
Exactly.
she probably didn't know anything about Athens either.
Neither one of us.
Yeah.
We just
That's kind of romantical if you think about it, though, because
Well,
the two of you starting out and driving down to a place neither of you really knew anything about.
well, I really respected this young professor and what he was doing, and then I did as much study as I could to find out about the University of Georgia and thought, well, that looks like what I'd like to do. Mm-hmm. It was interesting. I applied to Baylor as well because I was a good Baptist. Well, Baylor just flat turned me down because of my freshman year.
Really? Even after the 3 years of redemption,
Yes.
they still turned you down?
Yeah, and
Wow.
so then we thought, well, then this is where we're to be.
That must have been a disastrous first year, Bill.
It was a lot of fun.
You know, you learned, right?
I learned. I enjoyed it. I mean, it was great. And as it turned out, I mean, the Lord has a way of using things. In my career as an academic, I knew when I got freshman students who were on the same track that I had been on, how to deal with them because I had been there. And
Isn't that interesting? That's
yeah.
really a gift.
It really was. I was able to use that first year experience so many times in my career.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't have had that perspective had you not gone off the rails
That's right.
in Florida.
That's right.
Wow.
So I could tell students, yeah.
Sometimes things have a way of coming back around like that in
Absolutely.
their teaching tools.
Yes.
And maybe that's what was meant all along, or maybe you just played it in and it made you better. So,
but it worked
I don't
out.
know, but it did. Okay, so you're at UGA and you're in Athens.
Yes.
And Sarah's in Athens. And are you liking Athens?
Loved Athens.
Yeah?
We lived right up the hill, up Baxter Hill, in an apartment, and I could walk down the hill to school, walk down the hill to the football stadium. And in those days, of course, they were tickled to death for people to come to football games and fill the stadiums because it wasn't like it is today. And so Sarah and I enjoyed that from the very first week we were there, sitting there and cheering on the Bulldogs. So we became red and black very fast, and then Sarah became pregnant very fast. And our first baby was born the week before our first anniversary. And so that then altered life for both of us, surprise, surprise. Yeah. But that's the way
that's
it
life.
was.
Sometimes life comes at you fast.
It was. But we enjoyed Athens, really respected the faculty that I had. It worked out very well for me. Yes.
In a period of just a few years, you find your niche in life with your studies. You find your wife.
I was blessed.
You relocate to Athens. You're in grad school now, so it's a lot more serious and a lot more interesting and engaging, I'm sure.
Oh, far more.
And then you have a baby.
I found graduate school so much better than undergraduate was okay, but graduate school really turned me on.
Me too. I can tell you that the time I spent in grad school changed my thinking, changed my life. It was great.
Yes.
So that's neat. I wish everybody could, hone in on something they like that much and learn about it. So that's good.
That's good. And
so
we went there for 2 years. In other words, the idea was I'd get my master's degree and then would probably go back to Virginia, and then we didn't quite know what we'd do from there. But that was the plan.
Okay.
So we're into the program in Athens, so we're happy.
And so how did that play out?
Well, it's a 2-year master's program, and at the end of the second year, Sarah went to a boarding Christian school right outside of Orlando in a small town called Zellwood, Florida, and she had strong family ties to that school from birth, and so spring break of my second year in graduate school, we drove to Orlando with our baby Gwen and visited Hampton DeBose Academy. And while we were there, the president of Orlando Junior College, who was also affiliated and friends of the folks there, was there. And one thing led to another. And he said, "What, you're getting a master's in philosophy?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "We're looking for a philosophy instructor for next year."
Wow.
And he said, "Do you have plans?" And I said, "No, I really don't know." And he said, "Well, do you want a career in college teaching?" And I said, "I don't know. I think I do." And he said, "Well, why don't you come with us for a couple of years and see if you like college teaching? And if you do, then you can go back and get your doctorate, and we will work with you as far as a transition in and out." And so Sarah and I said, this sounds good. So that's what we did. So
What were you
moved to Orlando.
thinking? What were you thinking you might have done when you finished your? Did you have any idea at all?
No, I was just absorbed in my studies, thinking that it probably, the more I got into the master's program, I realized I really did want to go on into the doctoral program, because I knew you really can't stop.
You want to dig even deeper into philosophy.
But by that time I was getting tired, and I thought, if this opportunity does present itself, which it did, then I would take it and see where it leads. So we moved then from Athens to Orlando in 1965. We say that was BD. That was before Disney. And Orlando was the most beautiful city in the world.
Oh, wow.
A little over 100,000 people. This college was a small, private junior college on a gorgeous lake, nice facilities. And so I just started teaching, just green as grass. I just had to, I stayed
young,
two or
too.
three lectures ahead of the students.
Mm-hmm.
And I was young and they were young, and it was great.
Yeah.
And so then at the end of my first year there, our really fine dean of men left to go to Stetson. And so the president called me in and said, "I've watched you with the students, and you seem to interact well, and you've gotten involved as a fraternity advisor helping those students." And he said, "We're looking for a dean of men. Would you continue teaching philosophy and be our dean of men?" Well, it meant $600 more a year. And I said, "Heck yeah, that works."
Yes, absolutely.
So my second year, I was the only member of the philosophy department and the dean of men.
And how long were you in Orlando?
2 years.
Just 2 years?
It's funny how things work out. During the spring of my second year at Orlando Junior, the University of Central Florida was announced. And there were no buildings. They had the land just on the outskirts of Orlando. And a man by the name of Charles Milliken was the president. And he had his office in the bank building downtown. So I told Sarah, I said, I think I'm going to go talk to Dr. Milliken and see if I can be his dean of men. That'd be a nice step up. And she said, "Sure." So I made an appointment with Dr. Milliken and went out over to his office. Unbeknownst to the folks at Orlando Junior, I just went on mine. And he was as nice as he could be. And he said, "Sit down and tell me about yourself. And I understand you're at Orlando Junior. Where'd you get your doctorate?" And I said, "Dr. Milliken, I don't have a doctorate." He said, "Oh." He said, "I've got an idea. Why don't you get one and come see me in 3 years?" And I said, "Oh." And he said, in other words, we have to have a doctorate. And I said, "Okay." So I went home and told Sarah, and she said, "We've had 2 good years here. Let's go ahead and make the break. Let's go right on back to Athens and let you start your doctoral studies." I said, "Good idea." So I went into the Orlando Junior College president and told him what I was doing, and he said, "Okay, I understand." So we moved back to Athens, and I went right back to school after a 2-year break by then, and that was the break I needed to recharge my batteries and get back into the program. Well, it was so funny because I went, of course, straight back to the philosophy department. And the chairman, he was my master's thesis advisor, Dr. Blackstone. And he said, "It's interesting you're wanting to come back and work on your degree in philosophy." He said, "We've got a brand new program that you might want to look into for people like you who want to teach, but also like university administration. And he said, there's a guy named Dr. Ted Miller. Said, I met him just the other day. Would you like for me to call him and see if maybe Ted has something that would be more appealing to you than a traditional PhD in philosophy? And I said, well, I'll explore it. So I went to Dr. Miller. And he said, I'm brand new. He said, I just came from the University of Florida. And I said, well, guess who was there? Well, it turned out he was the resident advisor in the dorm where I had been a freshman. But we didn't know one another, just small world stuff. And so he said, we're putting together this doctoral program, so we've just gotten it approved. And he said, if you sign on, you'd be on the front end. Mm-hmm. And he said, what we're finding is that people like you who've been out there and had a little taste of student affairs administration want to get a doctorate. And so we're really slanting it toward human development and psychology, which will tie right into your philosophy. So I went back to Dr. Blackstone in the philosophy department and said, I think Dr. Miller. So anyway, I went over there and started studying seriously in the area of human development and psychology.
And that was interesting to you as well.
Very much. Okay. Because I liked that 1 year as Dean of Men sort of showed me what. And so then I was fortunate because I got word through Dr. Miller, said, by the way, Dean Tate, the longtime Dean of Men at the University of Georgia here. And I said, oh yeah, I know who Dean Tate is. He's looking for an assistant. So I said, well, so I called up and got an appointment with Dean Tate and got hired. So I was able then to work in the office of the legend and go to graduate school, and as they say, the rest is history. And so,
that's amazing.
Yeah. And I was fortunate because typically when you finish your doctoral program, the university which awards you the degree will not hire you. They want you to go away and establish yourself.
Right.
But they hired me out of field. And so I was able to stay there at the university in Student Affairs Administration, worked in the Dean of Students office for, you know, your neighbor, Southern Sims.
Yes.
Well, Southern was my boss at the University of Georgia. So that's how we met. Yeah.
That's
and so
neat.
He had just come there in that role, and I had just come back from Florida. So we met in the fall of 1967.
Aren't they just the nicest people?
They are. And he became quickly the older brother I never had.
Sure.
And so that clicked. So I was able to work, go to school. And so then in 1970, when I finished my program, he took me into his office. And so then 2 years later, director of student activities at the University of Georgia. And so I thought my career was set. I would never leave the University of Georgia. I mean, I'm a bulldog.
Right.
Yes, they say, I'm a double dog. I have two degrees from Georgia.
That's right.
You know, master's and doctorate.
Yeah.
So it was really funny. And so I went down to Memorial Hall, which you know.
I do.
And that was our student center, and we needed a student center, as you remember, so desperately.
Yes.
Well, so I started working with student committees and with students, and we wanted to get the funding to get a student center, which later became the Tate Center.
Wow.
And so I had the good fortune of being a part of that movement with a lot of good support from Representative Bob Argo from Athens, who was a longtime statesman from Athens. He was instrumental in getting the money for the building, and then later instrumental in getting the building named for my hero, Dean Tate. And so that's why it's the Tate Center, because of Bob Argo.
That's great.
Yeah, and so I was there and all that. Well, everything's fine. I'm loving it. Life's good.
Yeah, and you're wearing a lot of hats at that point.
Wearing a lot of hats, but enjoying it, loving Athens, love the University of Georgia. And the phone rings one day from somebody I'd never heard of at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, and said, we're looking for a dean of students in the Liberal Arts College. Can we come to Athens and take you to lunch and talk? And I said, sure. So this man came up. Turned out he was a prince of a guy. We hit it off immediately, and he laid out some options that wouldn't be possible at the big university because it was a smaller school.
Okay.
And so before I knew it, we were packing up and moving to Macon, and a whole new chapter in my life at Mercer University.
What year was this around?
This was 1981.
This was right at 81.
Yeah, this was 1981. This was
so we barely
fall semester.
overlapped at Georgia before you
left. We moved in August of 81.
Okay.
Yeah, to Macon.
Shoot. I came into Athens in August of 81, so we just
your
missed
car
one
was
another.
going into town, and my car was going out of town.
Going out the other side.
Out the Macon Highway.
Wow. And so I'm sure that was a tough choice, though, because you had so many good years at Georgia.
Yes.
And really enjoyed everything that you did. What's going on the home front at that point?
Well,
I know you have more kids than Gwen. So.
Well, see, by this point we had 3 children.
Okay.
Well, it was 2 weeks before the start of Gwen's senior year in high school.
You didn't.
At Clark Central.
Yeah.
So we sat down, and Laura and Nan were younger, so that wasn't as
much of an issue.
As much of an issue at all. And so we decided that it would really benefit all of us to do this. And so Gwen then decided, rather than go to high school in Macon, Gwen's always been very mature. And Gwen is a good scholar.
She was born mature?
I don't know if she was born mature, but she is
maybe
mature.
Typical of firstborns. They're a little more mature than...
She's a stereotypic firstborn. Yeah. And so she enrolled at Mercer as a freshman and lived in the dorm.
Wow.
And just did exceedingly well.
Skipped her senior year.
She just skipped it. But what was interesting, we didn't really realize... Well, we realized, but we didn't appreciate exactly what she was doing. She was overloading and doing all these fun things in high school academically. Mm-hmm. And all she lacked to get a diploma from Clark Central was her senior English. So the high school people said, hey, we'll just transfer in your freshman English and give you a diploma at the end of the year. So she graduated with her class. But I don't even remember now if she went to the ceremony. But anyway, so she is a graduate of Clark Central, but also a graduate of Mercer University. Fantastic. So she went on to Mercer, and then our girls went to school.
Gwen went straight into college, so she was in the dorm.
Yes.
So that was quite an experience for 17, I guess she was at that point.
Yeah.
Probably one of the younger students there.
She was.
But I'm sure she can handle herself. That's one thing I do know, and I have met Gwen a number of times. She can definitely...
She can handle herself.
She can handle herself. So, and then the 2 younger girls enrolled in school in Macon. And so they finished out there, I guess? Mm-hmm. Finished out their school.
Had a good high school experience there, yes.
Good.
And it was so interesting. One of the nice things about private school like that, we had a consortium arrangement that we would bring in faculty children to Mercer from these schools in the consortium, and we could farm our students out to other schools.
That's nice.
So our younger 2 had an opportunity to go to Samford University, which was a sister school in Alabama and Birmingham. So the younger 2 went on to Birmingham, and they both graduated from Samford.
Are they close in age? The
2 years apart.
2 years apart.
Laura went first, and then Nan followed.
Nice.
But they had opportunities to go to 7 different schools in the consortium.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Good choices.
Yeah, nice faculty benefit.
Oh, I bet. That is a big perk.
Big perk.
Yes.
We paid room and board, but their full education, the tuition.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
That is great. And then the opportunities that it's given all the girls.
And quality schools.
Yeah.
So it worked out beautifully.
Yeah.
They were happy and we were happy.
So you know what's funny? If people are watching, we're 35 minutes in, and they're watching you going, I had no idea, because everybody in Hartwell knows you as a photographer.
Right.
So, and I confess to you that I didn't know a lot of your background either. So this is news and interesting to me. So I think a lot of people who know you had no idea.
And I'm a very atypical professor.
Yes.
Yeah, I was very
There's
atypical.
no bow tie.
No. Did wear coat and tie. In that time you
did,
wore it.
right.
The faculty in that day looked different than the faculty now. But I just loved it. It was telling. I was able to tell people and to share. I used to tell my students, the only difference between me and you is I'm a student, but I'm a little further along on the path, and I want to tell you about my friends. And so then by going into human development and psychology, then it opened up a whole new area. And I was so fortunate in that program at Georgia that when I got to Mercer, see, I continued to teach adjunct in the philosophy department while I was at UGA. Well, when I got to Mercer, I got a faculty appointment in the philosophy department and taught an 8 o'clock class every quarter just for kicks, just to keep my hand in while I was dean of students. And then the opportunity, it was interesting. Southern Sims became president of Tift College. And he said, I'm going to a school that I'm afraid is drowning, and I'm trying to recruit some friends to help me try to save it. So would you come? Said, you've been dean of students 4 years. And I said, yeah, I'd like to go back to full-time teaching. So I went, instead of driving 15 minutes from my home to downtown Macon, I turned around and drove 15 minutes to Forsyth and started teaching at Tift. So I was there the final 2 years. And with my background in human development, psychology, and philosophy, I was able to be SACS certified and teach a broad range of courses. And so it was great.
I bet that was fun after being locked in.
Yes, it was great. And working at a women's college, I didn't know what to expect, but they were fine young women. They were good students. I had good colleagues. So it was good. But that only lasted 2 years. It closed down. So Mercer took us all back, the faculty that they could use.
Sure.
So I went back to Mercer and continued for the final 16 years there. So
till retirement.
Yeah.
Wow. A goofy question, but did your studies in human development make you a better dad?
Well, by that point, yes, and the real parent, because of my crazy schedule, was Sarah. You know, I hope it made me a better dad, but there again, Sarah is the one who really, because I had crazy hours.
And she, with 3, was busy.
She was busy, but she was full-time mom. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, she's been the stabilizing influence initially in my life and then later in the life of the girls.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. So you have grandkids now, I guess?
Oh, yeah.
How many?
2.
You have 2 grandkids. Mm. How awesome is grandparenthood?
Love it.
That's great.
Love it.
That's good. So when did you come to Hartwell and why?
Well, when we lived in Athens, we had a little cottage on the lake outside of Livonia, and we would go up on weekends and during the summer, and we just loved it. But on rainy days, we would get in the car and just explore, and so we would come to various places, and Hartwell was one of those places. And so we started looking around and decided if we ever get serious about living on the lake, we'd rather come to Hartwell. We discovered Lightwood Road during the mid-'70s, and Sarah said, this is where I'd like to be if we ever had the opportunity.
That was foresight.
Yes, she just liked what we saw, and we liked the part of the lake there. So when we moved to Macon, we sold the little cottage, put our money in the bank, and forgot about it. And then later on, with the Sims, Southern and I started talking. You know, he said, we're kind of interested in the lake. And I said, well, we are too. And I said, let's all get in the car and go, let us show you. So we came and went straight to Lightwood Road. Wow. And the Sims found their property, and we found our property. And we closed on our property in January of '87. And so we have been coming to Hartwell part-time since January of '87.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And then Southern closed on his later than that, but they came up a lot on weekends.
And then they built.
Yeah.
And we bought.
How nice is that to have neighbors down the road that you go way back with?
We go back, and we bought what you know is the old Mac Oglesby property.
Yes, a
we bought the
property.
old farmhouse that had 3 beautiful acres of land with the shore and so on. Matter of fact, the lake came in, and when it was dammed up, they flooded Mr. Mack's farmland, as you know. Mm-hmm. And so we bought the old farmhouse. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's where we lived during weekends and summers and so on until we remodeled it, and then in '86 when we developed it.
Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful development.
We love it.
Beautiful homes.
You know, Larry Torrance did the developing and did a beautiful job
Yeah, he
for
did.
us.
He
Yeah.
sure did. That's good. So when you moved here, is that when you picked up the camera?
No, in the mid '80s, Mercer is a beautiful, beautiful old campus, at least the old part. And I just decided, well, Sarah had a little Agfa camera that her parents had given her before she went to Europe, a little German film camera, rangefinder, nice quality camera that produced good photos. But in the mid '80s, I decided I wanted to go take some pictures of these beautiful old buildings. We had a wonderful camera store in Macon, Coke's Camera. And so I went down and didn't know anything about cameras or those people at Coke's and said, this is what I want to do. So they said, all right, this is what you want. So they sold me a camera and a lens and said, go take pictures. And they developed the film, of course. So that would have been in about 1982.
And you didn't have any training, or you just decided, I like what I see, so I'm going to take a picture?
Mm-hmm. Just started wandering around campus with a camera taking pictures.
That's great.
That's how it all started.
And then you retired and you had a little more time on your hands.
Yes. And as I evolved into the hobby, then I came to Hartwell in '87 and found Billy Moorhead, who turned out a legend.
Right?
Yep. And wonderfully patient with me, who didn't know anything. And he would develop my film and critique my pictures. And he was a wonderful mentor. So Billy then, from '87 forward, through his life, became my mentor in Hartwell.
Wow. I never knew that.
Yeah.
So that was great to have him there to kind of...
Oh, he was wonderful. We'd take a trip, take a lot of pictures. Go somewhere, take a lot of pictures. And I'd come back, and Billy would develop, and he would just sit there, spread them all out on the calendar and say, okay, now let's talk about this one. What could you have done? So and that's where I met Gail Matter.
Okay.
She was Gail, what was her name? McGee. Yeah. And she was there, and she would also sometimes look at my pictures.
Yeah.
And she was a photographer too.
Right.
So that's how it continued to evolve. And then when digital came along, instead of saying, I don't want any part of it, I embraced it, even though I'm not a techie. And I bought
that
my
was
first
big, because you had fully educated yourself on all the parts of a manually operated camera. So to take the jump to digital was...
Billy and I had a long talk about it.
Yeah.
And he said, this is the future.
So he knew.
And he said, you have an opportunity to be in on the ground floor. And so then the process of buying and selling cameras started, because I think my first digital camera was 1.3 megapixel, and that didn't produce very large enlargements. And so it evolved from there. Mm-hmm. And then by being able to put it on the computer, see it, size it, edit it, and then later I got a color professional printer and could print my own photographs up to 11 by 4, well, the bigger ones even. I can go what they call A3 paper, but some pretty big enlargements. Mm-hmm. So it just sort of evolved from there.
Now, I see you a lot on the way home on Reed Creek Highway, pulled over to the side, looking at the sunset on the bridge. And I think to myself, be careful out there, Bill.
That's what Sarah said.
Is that what she said too? Because it's such a beautiful, I want to take a picture of you looking at the sky and just watching until the right. That's just such a nice image.
Well, it's funny. The deputies now know me well. The first night I think I did it, the deputy came and slowed down. He said, are you okay? And I said, yes, sir.
You're not going to jump, are you?
Yeah, he said, what are you doing? And I said, see that? I said, that's God's canvas. And he's up there splashing color all over it. And he said, you're right. And I said, what I'm trying to do is I said, God's the artist. I'm the one with a camera just trying to capture and share the beauty that he's doing in the sky. The deputy said, okay. And so now they come by and wave at me, and the sheriff will slow down and say, what's God doing tonight?
Aw, that is so cool.
And people too, but that's a good place. I'm fortunate though, where we live, I can either stand on my porch and shoot east and get sunrise, or walk down, as I did this morning, to the dock and shoot east and get the sunrise. And during a lot of the months, I can go down to the shore and go to my neighbor's dock and take photos west to get sunset.
That's nice.
But the
Very
way
few places on the lake you can do
I know,
that, right?
I can do east and west.
Yeah.
But the way the sun shifts in the summer from down where I am, I don't get the same view as I get from the bridge.
Right.
And so I quickly discovered, and it's the second bridge from town, so it's wide enough to pull your car off.
Right.
And I'm sheltered against the wall, and so far I'm fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. So watch out for Bill if you're driving on Reed Creek Road.
Yeah. I'm the crazy old man with the camera.
You know, we talk about the sunrise, sunset photos because I see those a lot on Facebook that Sarah shares, and they are absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
And I look at them every time she posts them. I look at them and I marvel at the colors and the patterns, and I think what a blessing that you're able to capture that for people that might not be able to see it.
Well, and a lot of folks can't because of trees or
obstructions,
they're working or
they
whatever.
Sleep. Yeah, because they work late.
Yeah, so they're not able to. And so what I'm trying to do is just capture, you know, as we say, to God be the glory. I'm just up there with a camera trying to capture the beauty He is creating. And we live in a beautiful place.
Don't we, though?
Oh, I can't imagine living anywhere else.
I know.
Hartwell is the smallest, most rural area we've ever lived in. Mm-hmm. And when we first came here full time, we thought, we don't know what this is going to be like. Oh my goodness, this is the most wonderful place in the world. Aww. We absolutely love it. It became home. So we're what we call Hartwell. Well, we're first of all Georgians by choice.
Yes.
And then Hartwellians by choice. And we are blessed to be in Hartwell.
We are as well. It's absolutely the best. Now, we talk about sunrise, sunset pictures like that's all that you do. But my goodness, you take pictures of people and things, and you even had an entire exhibit. But back up, I want to go back to the picture at the Livonia Hospital. I saw the picture on the wall, absolutely beautiful. And I said, oh, that's Bill Powell's picture. So how did that happen? The
old Shaw Barn, which is no more on the road to Bowman, just beyond the Y, they had different crops there every season and was perfect with the morning sun. When it came in, I would go down there and set up my tripod, and depending upon the crop, I'd have the barn in the scene. And that particular picture was sunflowers. And I had my tripod set up and the light came just right and I got the photograph. And I entered, they had a contest when the Ty Cobb Hospital first opened, which was, I thought, a really clever thing. They invited folks from Hart, Franklin, and Stevens County to submit pictures to them, which they, if they selected them, they would print, frame, and display in the new hospital. And they had first, second, third prize. Well, I entered, they said, put them on a CD and turn them in. So I put them in, forgot about, I don't know. And all of a sudden I got a call from Mark Hines, who was then editor of the Hartwell Sun, one day out of the clear blue, and he said, congratulations. And I said, well, what, Mark? And he said, you won the contest at Ty Cobb Hospital for your sunflower picture. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. So then as a result of that, then things just started growing and opportunities came. And then the folks, when they built City Hall, they wanted one of my pictures. See, I love to take pictures of the dam. And I go down there when the spillways open and get the rainbow. Well, City Hall wanted one of those, so we've got one of those. And then when Terry Sugart built the new McDonald's, he wanted some pictures and have them put on the wall. So we did those. And then last year, I was fortunate that with the new Hampton Inn, through the man who did the Ty Cobb pictures, the processing, he linked us all up, and so my photos are at the New Hampton Inn in the public areas and in the rooms.
That's so pretty good for a guy that picked up a camera as a hobby.
Yeah, it was, one thing leads to another, and I just love it. You know, I just enjoy what I'm doing, and
I love the pictures of the people that you do too. You manage to capture people.
I try to. My goal is to catch people being people. Matter of fact, before we leave today, I've got my camera. I won't go anywhere with that. I love this view of you with the lights coming. So I want to get a picture. I want to get a picture of you to give to Bo.
Oh, that would be awesome! Something he could throw some darts.
No, something he can look at and say, "My beautiful wife."
He would love that. Thank you. That's so nice. I can remember you from early on when we first moved here with the kids.
Yes.
On the soccer fields at the Y.
Yes.
You were so incredibly patient with all the kids as you took their pictures. You were just so fun and nice, and they loved that. And my kids to this day have really nice pictures of them playing soccer that they wouldn't have because I had probably a phone camera or something and lost the pictures or didn't develop, and instead they have these beautiful pictures that you did for all the kids. That was just so nice.
It was just fun. It's something I still enjoy doing. When I have an opportunity, I like this past summer at the pool at the Y, and I'll get permission to take the pictures of the children and then get them printed and then give them. I don't know if you saw the Shrek picture when Shrek went to McDonald's.
Yes, I
and
love
that precious
cute
little boy
going rawr with him. That was so cute.
Well, see, as soon as I saw the child, I just knew that was going to be. So I shot maybe 6 pictures, and that's one of the 6. And so part of the fun was not only to see it, of course, on the front page of the newspaper, but to give those photographs to his mother.
I bet she was
And so
thrilled.
I always print enough for mama and for grandmothers on both sides.
Smart.
Yeah. So it's just a way that I can share something that I enjoy.
And you do. You're really sharing with that. I remember going to the art center when you had your exhibit. And just enjoying walking from picture to picture, photograph to photograph. And
that was fun.
That was amazing.
That was fun.
You think you may do another one of those?
Probably not. I don't know. I don't know if
it takes a lot of pictures.
And I don't know if there's interest in it. We had talked about a follow-up, behind the scenes, Hartwell. Those pictures were people that you see. Then the idea of a follow-up of a show of people you don't see, the behind the scenes, but it never.
I think that's a great idea because those are some of the most interesting people.
Absolutely.
The ones that are not out there.
The ones that are behind the scenes, yes. Like the guys down here repairing the patches in the road so we won't bump our cars on the pothole.
Yes.
Yeah, some of those people. The guys up there on the utility pole, you don't see those people. So that was the thought, but nothing ever came of it.
So, but if by popular demand, hint, hint, if we would like to see that, maybe we could communicate that to you in some way and maybe make that happen. That would be fun. So what's the future look like for you? More travel, more photography?
Oh, Sarah and I love travel.
Yeah, I know. I was going to ask you about that. I think you've passed that love to your children, too, because
absolutely.
Gwen's on the road quite a bit, too.
We were fortunate when we were younger that both of our parents were retired and they could come to Athens and stay with our kids. And so we started international travel in 1970. And we've been fortunate to travel to many places of the world. And then when the girls got old enough to take them with us. And
who decides where to go? And how do you decide?
We just decide. I mean, Sarah, it's so funny. And I'm sure you and Bo are the same way. After 55 years of marriage, Sarah knows what I'm thinking. I know what she's thinking. So we just sort of know what we want. We've got an upcoming trip to Ireland. Well, we've been to Ireland on several occasions, interior. But a UGA flyer came out announcing a trip around Ireland on a cruise line that we like, Oceania. And so it's going to hit the ports all around. And so as soon as it came, Sarah said, "What do you think of this?" And I said, She said, So she started calling.
That's great. So that's an upcoming trip to Ireland. Mm-hmm. And where else might you go? Where have you not gone that you really want to go?
The place I really wanted to go was Cuba. It was a bucket list. And so March a year ago, my 2 older daughters and I went to Cuba. I wanted to go to Cuba. It was funny. I told you I moved to West Palm Beach. Uh-huh. That summer, I met 2 young Cuban boys my age whose families had left the year before.
Oh, wow.
Because they could see, their fathers could see what was happening. Mm-hmm. And they were very wealthy boys, and so they took their fortune and came to West Palm Beach. And these boys said, Bill, if you ever get an opportunity to go to Cuba, go. God lives there. And they said, when you get there, you'll understand why we say that. And so life got in the way. And then travel restrictions. And so when the travel opened up with Gwen and her role at Clemson in Parks, Recreation, Tourism Management, she has a colleague in the tourism area who is sort of a Cuba specialist. And she had heard me speak of this bucket list, so she said, Dad, let me handle it. So Gwen, being our international traveler, got us a villa, a driver, handled all the arrangements with Delta, our visas, and Sarah couldn't go because of all the walking and all that. And Nan couldn't go, the youngest one in Athens. So Laura and Gwen and I went to Cuba. And we were on the streets 10 and 11 hours a day with our cameras.
That would be so memorable. What do you remember most? Was it colors or people or? People.
And we had the funniest experience. We hadn't been on the street 2 hours, and I lay him saying, old lady, hey, I'm 77 years old. So I don't know how old she was. But anyway, she came up to me and she pointed right in my face and said, Ernesto, Ernesto. Well, I was in a safari shirt, with a pocket, had a camera around my neck, had on a bucket hat that said Hartwell on the front. And I said, Ernesto, she said, si, senor, Ernesto Hemingway, you Hemingway. Well, Laura and Gwen just about fell on the sidewalk laughing, as did I. And Gwen looked at me and said, Dad, you do.
I see it.
Yeah. And so I started getting that from the older females.
How funny.
On the street. We'd get that 2 or 3 times a day. Ernesto. And then they wanted their picture made with Ernesto.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yes. And so the people, and we couldn't speak English. I mean, we couldn't speak Spanish, and they couldn't speak English.
Right.
But they're wonderful, warm, loving, kind people. And we were just walking the streets, the old streets of Havana and all that. And then we, through our driver, were able to go to some of the environs. So it was a dream come true for me.
I bet.
And pictures, oh my goodness, I took thousands of pictures, and so did the girls.
I bet you're still developing pictures.
Well,
you're not developing anymore, but you know what.
I still, matter of fact, I pulled up some for you today and brought back memories. Yeah, so travel's been a very important part of our lives. Yes.
I bet.
Yeah.
What's the most memorable other than Cuba? Cuba was interesting, but what about when you and Sarah went in the early days? Anything stick out?
Oh, there have been so many good trips. We love England. We're Anglophiles.
Okay.
And in those days, the TWA had what they call fly drive. We would fly from Atlanta to London, get a rental car, and then Sarah would plan our trips through B&Bs. And we met some wonderful people, and we remained in touch with those people. And so England is probably our favorite place.
Is that because of history or because you have genealogy that goes back to England? Or?
Well, English and Welsh background, but we just loved it. And I loved English sports cars, had an MGB. And so it all just sort of tied together. And then when you first met me, I had London taxi cabs.
Yes, you did. I forgot about that.
So that was, again, a life chapter with my cars, and they were English cars.
So you had a whole car thing. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, I had a whole car thing. That was a big part of my life.
Wow.
And had London taxi cabs and Morgans. I mean, the real old taxis from London. And they're all gone now, but we remained friends with some of those people. And that, again, was a link to England.
That's interesting. That's
fascinating. I've been blessed with a very interesting life,
And may you continue to be, and your family too. And your grandkids are growing up, right?
The oldest is 24, and the youngest is a junior in college.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. That's good. So they're getting to the point where they could travel some too.
Oh, they do. Their parents love travel. Laura and Mike and Anderson. All of our girls love travel because they are used to traveling.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, this has been so interesting. We could spend another 30 minutes on cars, but
it's been fun.
So, Bill, thank you for doing all the wonderful things that you do here and sharing your talents with people. It's so gracious of you to to take all of these beautiful photographs, whether they're children or people or landscapes or sunsets, and sharing them with us. And it's such a gift, and we thank you.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me. And it's just something that it's just something I enjoy doing. It's a way to share, and I like to share.
That's great, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
That was fun, wasn't it? All right, thanks so much, and join us next week. Wes Bailey, thanks for the directing, and HeartCom for allowing us to be here and do this show. So we'll see you next week. Thank you.